September 21, 1874. A steamer cuts through the strait that separates the island of Zanzibar from the African mainland, and on its deck stands a man returning to a world he once left behind. His name is Henry Morton Stanley. 28 months earlier, he had walked out of these same waters as the most famous explorer alive, the man who had found Dr. Livingstone, alone and forgotten, deep in the heart of Africa. Now he is back. Not to rest on that fame, but to finish what Livingstone could not, to trace the last great mysteries of this continent, its rivers, its lakes, its hidden heart, and lay them bare before the world. As the ship draws close, Zanzibar rises to meet him. Palm-covered ridges. White stone buildings glowing under a hazy tropical sky. The scent of cloves and cinnamon drifting out over the water. Boats swarm the steamer the moment it drops anchor. This is the monthly mail from Europe, and every European on the island wants his letters, his newspapers, his small parcel from home. Around him, a babel of tongues, Swahili, Arabic, French, Hindi, English, all tangled together in the noise of arrival. Stanley makes his way to the house of an old friend, a merchant named Augustus Sparhawk, who takes him in exactly as he did 3 years before. With him travel 3 young Englishmen who will become the beating heart of this story, brothers Francis and Edward Pocock, and a young man named Frederick Barker, along with 5 dogs, a small sailing yawl, and tons of provisions destined for the unknown. What follows are weeks of relentless motion. Zanzibar by day is chaos. Porters hauling bales of cloth and coils of brass wire through crowded streets, beads sorted by the thousand, crates hammered shut in the suffocating heat. Every item will matter later. Cloth and beads and wire are currency here, the price of safe passage through 100 different tribal lands. But Zanzibar by evening is something else entirely, a slower, gentler place. Stanley and his companions ride out past the old fort, past the Sultan's palace with its covered walkway 30 feet above the street, out along quiet lanes bordered by banana groves and orange trees, until they reach a solitary cocoa nut palm standing sentinel over a scattering of forgotten graves. There, in the fading light, with the mainland lying dark and formless on the horizon, Stanley allows himself, just for a moment, to wonder what waits for him out there, and to hope that whatever darkness lies ahead, there might still be color in it. But Zanzibar is more than scenery. It is a crossroads of power and people, and Stanley takes care to understand both. At its center sits Sultan Sayed Bargash, an Arab prince raised to see the interior of Africa as a hunting ground for slaves and ivory, now pressured by British warships and the lingering echo of Livingstone's own pleading letters into turning against the very trade that built his fortune. Stanley writes of him almost sympathetically, a ruler caught between an old world and a new one, slowly, reluctantly, becoming an ally in ending the slave trade. Around the Sultan swirl the island's other peoples. The Arab settlers, many of whom vanished decades ago into the deep interior, to Ujiji, to Bunyanyem, and never came home, building fortified compounds and never quite admitting to themselves that Zanzibar is no longer where they belong. And then the Bangwana, Zanzibar's free-born people, the men who will make up the backbone of Stanley's expedition. He describes them with real affection. Proud of a clean white shirt and a red cap, endlessly sociable, capable of extraordinary loyalty or maddening unreliability depending entirely on how they are led. It was Wangwana porters, he reminds his readers, who carried Livingstone, and Burton, and Speke and Grant across this same unmapped continent. And beyond them, a people Stanley predicts will only grow more important with time, the Wanyamwezi, tireless, disciplined when respected, born to the work of carrying a nation's ambitions on their backs. Then comes the real labor, building an expedition out of nothing. The applicants arrive by the dozens, the sick, the old, the desperate, all hoping for a place on the muster roll. Stanley turns most of them away. But he welcomes back the veterans of his earlier journeys with real warmth, Manwasea, Chowpereh, Mabruki, men whose loyalty was proven in the search for Livingstone, and rewards each one according to his service. Gold rings, silver chains, a dagger, a bracelet, even a smallpox vaccination for a captain's infant son. Not everyone who joins him deserves the trust he places in them. One man, Msena, talks his way past every objection with tears and an eloquent story of persecution, only for Stanley to learn much later, far out on the shores of Lake Victoria, that the man was a murderer 8 times over. Meanwhile, an engineering problem threatens to derail the whole venture before it begins. Stanley's specially built exploration boat, the Lady Alice, arrives from England in sections, and each section is far too heavy and far too wide to carry down an 18-inch jungle footpath. In something close to despair, Stanley finds an English shipwright willing to delay his own voyage home by a month to rebuild the boat, splitting each piece in two so it can be carried by hand through the densest forest. It is this small, unglamorous act of craftsmanship that will make the entire expedition's river work possible. In these final weeks before departure, there's a quieter, more tender moment too. The young Pocock brothers and Frederick Barker come to Stanley, almost shy about the request, and ask permission to sew a small British flag, no bigger than a handkerchief, to fly over their tent and their canoe, a reminder of home carried into the unknown. Stanley, moved, tells them they may carry 1,000 flags if they wish. At last, the contracts are signed. 230 men, Bangwana, Banyamwezi, coastal recruits from Mombasa and Tanga, mark their names before the American consul, each promised wages, rations, and Stanley's personal word as an honorable man, that he will treat them with patience, care for them in sickness, judge disputes fairly, and never abandon the weak to the strong. In return, they pledge to serve him faithfully, like good and loyal children, as they put it, invoking God's blessing on the venture. And then, on the 12th of November, 1874, it is time. 224 men crowd aboard 6 Arab dhows at the wharf of the American consulate. Farewells are said, to friends, to fellow Europeans, to the Sultan himself, and finally to Augustus Sparhawk, whose hand Stanley grips in near silence, too moved for eloquence. The anchors rise. The lateen sails catch the evening wind. As the shoreline slips away and the last white faces fade from view, the sun sinks behind them, and the twilight deepens into shadow over the sea. Ahead lies nothing but the darkening outline of a continent that has swallowed better men than these. And into that darkness, Henry Morton Stanley and his small company of dreamers, opportunists, and true believers sail forward, toward the heart of Africa, and toward history.